All right. We want to welcome you again. Hopefully you can hear me this time to our fourth quarter CEU here at BAIS. We're very excited about this quarter and the content that we have for you. And I say we because we have a very special guest host. What would that be called? We have a guest presenter that will be joining us every week during the Enneagram fourth quarter CEU sessions that we're giving you. And we're going to be calling this the Enneagram and You. At least that's what we're calling it this week. We might change the name as we go if we come up with something that is more creative. But that's what we're going with now, all right? So the Enneagram is what we're going to be talking about in this CEU, and many of you perhaps are brand new to this idea of the Enneagram. In fact, some of you right now are thinking, what in the heck is the Enneagram? And so we're hopefully going to break that down for you in a way that you can understand, but just a quick note on that. The Enneagram is sort of a personality assessment, but so much more than a personality assessment. It is a tool that if used properly can help you to become the best version of yourself. And so we hope that some of the things that we share with you will be a help to you. And so we're excited about this content in this CEU. Now, without further ado, because I know most of you did not come to listen to me today or did not tune in just to listen to me today, I want to introduce you to our very special guest presenter for this quarter. She didn't invent the Enneagram, but she certainly perfected it. She's no stranger to you here at BAIS or those around the world that might be watching. I want to introduce you to the one, the only, Miss Kristin Lane.
Hi, guys. So, you guys have probably heard me talk about the Enneagram at different devotions. Well, I know I did one last year. And I just love the Enneagram. A lot of you guys know that I bring it up in conversations quite a bit. Most of you have been part of a lot of those conversations. So I'm really excited that we get to do this today and this quarter and talk about the Enneagram and what it means and how you can apply it to your life. So I'm going to start out to kind of just talk about what has the Enneagram meant to me? What's my personal story for the Enneagram? And it's kind of been a journey for me in a lot of ways. It's been a journey to kind of understand myself in a whole new way. I sometimes kind of don't even know what number I am, and it stresses me out. I'll be like, oh, am I this one or am I this one? I don't know. And then I get a little bit too self-reflective, and then I don't know which one I am. But I think that's what has been so powerful for the Enneagram for me, has been to like kind of have that journey of figuring out who I am and who God has made me, and how He has helped. This has helped me just be able to interact better with people and interact better with, and just even know who I am more. And so you kind of start out and you figure out, you take the test, which we will give you that link to see which Enneagram number you are. And then there's just kind of a lot of different ways you can go about it. You can kind of read books on it. It talks about different emotions that you can, that kind of go along with your number, and you can go down to kind of lots of different avenues in order to get to know yourself better. And I have been kind of learning about the Enneagram for probably about 2 years now, and I still just, when I read about it, I find new things out, and I just really enjoy that I am getting to know myself better through it. And kind of like sometimes you can even realize other people that are similar to you, and it's nice to kind of figure out the similarities and differences in that. So probably a lot of you are asking, well, what is the Enneagram? So I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an introduction to it. And then there's also notes attached, so you can fill in the blanks for the notes. And so the Enneagram describes your personality in terms of who you are and how you relate to God, others, and yourself. So the Enneagram kind of puts it into those three categories in order to know yourself better, that you can see how you can relate to God in a different way, how you can relate to other people, roommates, family members, coworkers. It really helps you to kind of realize what ways you can love them well and what ways you can encourage them, and maybe even talk to them about conflict. I think that's always been a big one for me, is I hate conflict. And so kind of learning how to walk through conflict with other people. And then as I kind of talked about in my personal journey, just how I am just learning a lot about myself and how why I tend to do certain stuff in certain situations. And so I've learned about myself. So the Enneagram has it split up into 9 different personality types. So during this CEU, each week we are going to talk about one Enneagram type. So we'll go through all 9. I'm going to talk a lot about what that type means and kind of some characteristics of that type, and then Jason's going to talk about kind of how that can relate to you and conflict, and biblically, how you can relate to God as well. And so just as we know with the Enneagram, there's both strengths and weaknesses that we bring into our relationships. So we're not all perfect. I know, it's shocking. But we definitely will be talking about some strengths of each type, but we will also be talking about weaknesses. And also for me, that has been kind of a big part of it for me, is talking about some of the weaknesses and seeing some of those trends or consistent things in my life that that I'm not as good at, that I need to grow in, and that has been really eye-opening for me. And we're also going to be talking about how each one has a besetting sin. And so a besetting sin is like a main or constant problem or fault. So when we use that word besetting, it just means kind of like a hard or struggle area for you. So with each type, they kind of have a sin that is kind of easy to fall into. And I think you'll kind of see it and realize, oh yeah, that's me. I have struggled with that for years, or I've struggled with being prideful, or being avoiding of conflict, or different types of that. So when we talk about besetting sin, that's just what we're talking about, kind of a hard, a constant problem or fault, just something that is kind of consistently hard for that type of person. And then another thing that I really enjoy about the Enneagram, it talks a lot about emotions. And as you know, I am an emotional person. So I've always been really interested in the interpersonal ways to see people and think about kind of how people relate to each other. And for myself, I like to look introspectively at that as well. So we will be talking about how each type has a core underlying emotion that type is trying to overcome. So this is an emotion that kind of is, that usually they kind of struggle with, or, in times of crisis, kind of like what we're in now, you will kind of lean towards or go towards, and it kind of becomes second nature for you to have this emotion. So I think this is very eye-opening in the way to understand kind of why we do what we do, especially in different times of life that are hard or not like our usual routine, which a lot of us are in right now. So there's 3 different types of emotions that is kind of the underlying core emotion that the different types fall into. So we have guilt is one, fear, or shame. And so we will be talking about how those underlying emotions also play a big part to understand why you do what you do and kind of how you relate to others in that. So the Enneagram is very, it's just a nice way to kind of organize all of the different types and to make sure, so that you can get to know God better, yourself and others better. And so I think that's the main goal of it, is to really look introspectively and then be able to use what you're learning then to relate to other people. All right, so now, Jason Whitehurst.
All right, let me go ahead and say this for the sake of plagiarism. If you hear me say something amazing during this series, it probably came from conversations I've had with Kristin or podcasts I've listened to from Ian Cron, who does a podcast on the Enneagram that I like very much. But here's what I want you to know about this journey that we're on. Psalm 139:14 says this: I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Each one of us have been fearfully and wonderfully made by God. Now, the tendency is many times for us to see the personalities or characteristics of other people's lives, and we want those things for ourselves. And so rather than focusing in on the people that we are and trying to become the best version of that, we're constantly reaching out for maybe the version that are the personalities or the people that we see traits that we really like. We're reaching out to become those things that we're really not, but we admire those things in others. And we need to all understand we're fearfully and wonderfully made by God, and we are each awesome the way that God has made us. So let me just give you a few introductory thoughts from my perspective as we start this journey out. And I want to start with a quote by Ian Cron, who said, "Buried in the deepest precincts of our beings is a sense there's a truer, more luminous expression of ourselves. And as long as we remain estranged from it, we will never feel aware, alive, or awake." And I do believe that this journey can help each of us to become more aware of the people that God has made us to be, and will help us to connect better with our Creator and with others. Let me tell you a couple things that the Enneagram is and is not. Number one, we need to understand that the Enneagram is not the gospel for your life. When we talk to you about these personality types, we're not presuming in any way that the things that we are saying are the hard and fast gospel rules for your life. What the Enneagram is it's a tool. Like this hammer that I hold in my hands, it's got great purposes and great uses, right? But in order for me to use a hammer properly, I first have to pull it out of the toolbox, all right? And then I have to use it for what it was designed for. Like it's made to drive nails into wood, right? And so if I'm willing to use it, if I'm willing to take it out of the toolbox, and if I'm willing to use it for what it was created for, it can be a very useful tool. But we all know that a hammer could also be a very destructive tool. Like I've missed many nails and hit my thumbs when trying to drive in a nail. Well, it's not useful for slamming down on your thumb. It's not useful for to bang on glass with. You can destroy a lot of things with a hammer. So what we can see is the Enneagram is much like that. It is a tool. In order for it to be effective in your life, you first have to be willing to use it, pull it out of the toolbox. But also you have to use it for the purposes in which it was created for, because it can be a very effective tool. But if used wrongly, it can also be a very dangerous tool. So what are some things you don't need to do with the Enneagram and with the information that you get during this CEU and hopefully in this journey of self-discovery that you will go on, whether it's listening to podcasts, whether it's reading books. Hopefully this sets you on a journey of self-discovery. We want to make sure you do the right things with that information you get. So here's a few don'ts with the Enneagram and with the information we give you in this CEU. Number one, don't weaponize this information in this tool. And when I say don't weaponize it, I simply mean that you don't want to use the information that you gather, the knowledge that you gather in this journey to maybe dismiss another person's personality type or to criticize them. An example of this might be something like if you looked at a person and said, "Hey, stop acting like a 5." Right? What you're doing is you're weaponizing your knowledge of the Enneagram to sort of be destructive in that person's life, and you don't want to do that. You also don't want to use this information or this knowledge as an excuse. You don't want to use this as an excuse for your own poor behavior. Or to justify reasons that you might not be growing in your life, or to set limitations upon your life about the person that you could be. For instance, when we say don't use it to make excuses, you might have a person that would say, of course I'm blunt and intimidating. I'm an 8, and that's what 8s do. That's totally using the Enneagram in the wrong way. That's using it as an excuse or a crutch for poor or bad behavior. And that's not what the purpose of this tool is. Also, something that you don't want to do is you don't want to use this as a tool to type others. Remember, this is a journey of self-discovery. And though sometimes it can be fun to maybe sit around and talk about what we see in ourselves and what we see in others, it's really not the purpose to make you Dr. Phil in everyone else's life so that you can go around and tell everyone what type they are. We should encourage everyone to sort of set out on this journey of self-discovery for themselves, to be able to learn for themselves what they are, and not have that cast on them by others who might be assuming things about them and not basing it on the accurate information of who you really are. Fourth, and I'm going through these in the order of your notes, so follow with me and fill in these blanks. 4, don't make assumptions. Don't make assumptions. Remember that people are made up of more than just their personality. So don't assume that because you know a person's Enneagram type that you fully understand them, because you don't know their history. You don't know where they've come from. You don't know the lens through which they're seeing life. So don't make assumptions just because you know someone's type. Still get to know them on a personal level, not just on a personality type level. Fifth, don't use it to manipulate others. Never use your knowledge of a person's personality type to manipulate or exploit them, right? And we'll talk about this. There are even some numbers on the Enneagram that sort of lend themselves to this kind of manipulative behavior. And we'll talk about that a little bit, but it's important for us to understand we're not to use this information, this knowledge that we gain as a tool of manipulation. This is to be used as a tool when it comes to others, to love people well and to strengthen our relationship with others. So those are just a few little tips as we begin this journey of self-discovery. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope it proves beneficial to you. So let me have a word of prayer with us before we get started on this journey. God, we thank you that you have already given us the assurance that we are each one fearfully and wonderfully made. God, would you help this journey for each of us be one that just helps us to become more aware of the person that you have fearfully and wonderfully made us to be. And Lord, let us use this information, this knowledge, Lord, to not just connect better with the person that we are, but with the one who created us, and the ones that you created us to be in relationship with. God, we love you and we thank you for all these things in your mighty and strong name. Amen. God bless you guys.